Dr. Danielle De La Mare is the founder of the Self-Compassionate Professor. She is a career wellness coach, she's a podcaster, and she's also the former tenured professor of communication studies. And her expertise, her background, as you've probably already guessed, it aligns well with many of the things that we talk about here. Her personal focus is on helping those who work in higher education who are stuck in the overwork burnout cycle. And she helps them pave a way to a more self-compassionate path. Now, what I really want to talk to Danielle about today is this whole theme of overwork and burnout, how we identify it's coming, how we identify if we're in it, and how we seek the ways, and how we identify the ways for moving through it. Welcome to the Henny Flynn podcast, the space for deepening self-awareness with profound self-compassion. I'm Henny. I write, coach, and speak about how exploring our inner world can transform how we experience our outer world, all founded on a bedrock of self-love. Settle in and listen and see where the episode takes you. So, Danielle, just such a delight to welcome you here. Really is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm here calling. I know you asked me to talk about this. I'm here calling from Denver, Colorado,
Okay.
and happy to be here.
Oh, lovely. Have I got a sense? So Denver, Colorado, I'm imagining big skies, very beautiful scenery, quite dramatic, I'm feeling. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Mountains everywhere. Yeah, it's similar to where I grew up, which was one state over in Utah.
Okay. Oh, lovely. Okay. So yeah, I mean, the wonder of these conversations to be able to connect in this way, in this very human way, right across, into different parts of the world. It feels so marvelous to me that we're able to do this.
Isn't it fascinating and magical and all the things? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it really is. Okay. So, gosh, I mean, I have given a very brief bit of background to you, and I'm sure kind of more will come through as we talk. But I've shared with everybody that the thing that really drew me to wanting to talk with you is your experience and the work that you do around burnout and the way that you support. I know it's very much kind of in that higher education realm, and the way that
Yes.
you support people who are facing into experiencing recovering from burnout. And people who know the podcast, who know me, will know that I've got my own story of that. So there's a very personal resonance there. But I would love to hear part of your personal story, like what led you to doing this work? What is it that called you?
Okay, so the work I do is I call myself a career wellness coach for academics. And what led me here is that I was in a really, really bad place, very, very disconnected from myself, very disconnected from family and friends. The only thing that really mattered, well, that's what I told myself then anyway, but the only thing that mattered to that person that I used to be was getting work done, proving myself, um, demonstrating that I was worthy of being there, worthy of being a professor, worthy of being in front of students, worthy of being a colleague to my colleagues, right? Like It was this like, I have to produce the research, I have to, have good teaching evaluations, I have to just show up and show people that I can do things and I can do them well at all times. And that was the only thing that mattered. And so um, I think my concern was if I get discovered, if they find out I really don't belong, if they find out I'm really not smart, if they find out I sort of um, hustled them into this job, like here I am in a tenure track faculty position, what then? What would happen if they knew how, incompetent I really was? And that was always the concern. And there there were things that I would do to keep myself always working. Like I would walk into my office and immediately close the door. I never ever spent time with colleagues, even though I would hear them outside my door. I could hear them banter often. And I had these little fleeting moments of longing, like, oh gosh, I would really like to hang out with them, but I can't. Nope. It was this sort of, nope, bring yourself back to screen, keep getting the work done. You don't have the luxury that they have. They're actually competent. You're not. So that's kind of where I was.
Is it is that something that you recognize was a pattern from before, or was it something that felt very kind of present in that environment that you were in then?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yes, it was always very present for me. And I think that I went the route of academia because it felt so important. And it was a way to prove to myself that I could be as good as the rest of the world.
Mm.
I was worthy. I was as worthy as other human beings. And I never believed that I was. So that's why I pushed myself through, graduate school, push myself into a tenure track job, push myself into getting tenure. And I don't think it was ever for me, honestly.
Mm. And that's a very hard realization, I think, to come to that point and go, oh, hang on. It actually is, maybe it's okay if I don't keep choosing this. It's so powerful and so hard to do and is so resonant. Can I just say, oh my goodness, Danielle, I knew. I mean, I said to you, didn't I, the minute that the screen came on and I saw your face, I just said, I know we're going to have an amazing conversation. It was just instant. And here we are. There's deep resonance in your
I'm
story.
so glad. I'm so glad. And then as I sort of imagine the resonance here between us, I just imagine sort of the ripple effect of resonance, you know, uh, with listeners. And
Yeah.
then so many of us have been through these really hard stories and felt like we were totally alone in them.
And it's so, I think it's so interesting when we tell these stories that from the outside it all looks like success.
Mm.
From the outside it looks like, oh, look at her, it's easy, or look at him, he's got it all, or they don't have to try hard, or they're not struggling with what they're doing. It's all, it's all about having this veneer of like, as long as I present as though everything is okay, then maybe I could believe that everything is okay.
Mm. And when you say that, I feel my insides just kind of crumble. Yeah. Ew, yuck. It's terrible, terrible.
And so human and so
Mm.
incredibly human. And I think there's something else, I think, in that, which is, so often I think when we're operating in an environment where burnout it may be present in some way, um, that it's also very easy to deny ourselves the experience that we're actually having. So to say, oh, the least of it is I'm being silly. The worst of it is, I'm selfish. Um, I don't know, like I have to keep showing up because look at everything that I've got. If I don't do that, then I'm being ungrateful. All of those kind of stories also can really intrude in this. And I'm guessing that really shows up in the academic environment as well.
Oh, I mean, like it's almost like the lottery sometimes in academia. Like if you get a tenure track job, it is huge. So many people who graduate with their PhD um, never get that opportunity, and they want it so, so badly. And it's like the dream.
Mm.
And so you get that, and to admit to yourself that you don't want it anymore, that's hard. And
Mm.
my husband, he's also an academic, and he actually left his tenure track job for mine. So we moved across the country to take my job, and he eventually got hired at my institution. It took a couple years, but we finally got there. And at that point, I remember him saying, when I said, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. He was absolutely like infuriated, just infuriated. Yeah, like, really? We've done all of these things and now you want out? Are you kidding me? I finally got the job here. Like, we're finally settled. We finally made the dream happen. It happened. And now you want out of the dream? Like, it was just this, like, this is ridiculous. And after that conversation, I pushed it down for a long time after and was like, okay, maybe that was just a momentary thing, right? Maybe I don't really feel that way. Maybe I was just having a bad day. And then I would just, like, as you say, tell myself, you're being silly.
Mm.
Just, buck up. It's going to be
Mm.
okay. Buck up.
Yeah.
You've got the dream. Embrace it.
Yeah, and that's oh my God, honestly, my head has just gone off into so many different like strands of what you've shared there. And I think the sort of one that's feeling kind of like weightiest is the impact of the family system. So, those stories that we carry from childhood, maybe from caregivers, can be very weighty, can, sort of drive us into being good child, good student, good worker, good professor, whatever it might be. But also, it's really interesting, isn't it, when we actually say to our immediate family system, actually, I'm not happy. Actually, there's something here that needs to change. And finding that sort of place of courage and commitment to ourselves. Yeah, I would love to talk about like that. Like how did you find that? What do you see really helps people with that?
I honestly think you need to be in touch with I shouldn't say you need to be. This isn't always the truth, but for me, I came um into a place where I was confronting my own mortality. I got a cancer diagnosis, and then it didn't matter anymore. I didn't care that I was upsetting my husband. I didn't care about my job suddenly. I didn't care about anything. And all I really wanted to do was be connected to the friends and family that I had abandoned for the for the many years previous because
Mhm.
I was so busy working. I just had this deep craving to be connected. Um, the Beatles song, "All You Need Is Love," that just it was playing in my head all the time during during that time when I had been diagnosed and didn't know what was going to happen yet and hadn't had any, follow up treatment, or nobody even knew what I needed at that point. But that couple of weeks between the diagnosis and meeting with my doctor for the first time, all I wanted to do was talk to my long lost family and friends. All I wanted to do was be connected, and didn't realize that was such a deep longing until I realized I might not get a chance to do it anymore.
So I want to honor that experience that you had
Mm.
so deeply, so fully.
Thank you.
Um, it reminds me of something that a client once said to me, and he said that he had met an older man, a friend of his father's, I think, who was struggling with some really critical health issues. And he said he had stood in the room with him and realized that if he didn't do the work on himself now, that was going to be him in 20 years' time.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
And it's interesting actually because I'm now, there's a little part of me that just wants to check in on him just to see like how is he, like was he able to maintain that clarity? Because I think, to your point, often what happens is that we have those warning signs, we have those moments of being with somebody who's experiencing the edges of burnout or experiencing the brutal reality of burnout, and we go, I don't want that to be me. And then life sort of kicks in again and we just barrel back into our old behaviors until something happens that makes us really go, oh my God, if I don't wake up now, I'm going to be in real trouble. And Danielle, it may not surprise you to hear that I had a major illness, almost died. If I hadn't made it into hospital, I wouldn't be sitting here now. And I didn't realize in the moment. It took me a little bit of time to have that awakening, but I heard it. I eventually really listened to that deep voice that went, no, no more. I am choosing something different. So I think there are different ways that it can kind of show up for us, but how exquisitely beautiful that for you, you had that realization of like, this is actually what I need. This is actually what my soul is seeking.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And as you say all of that, I'm I'm just thinking about how this time we have here on this planet is not long, not long at all. And how just how important, that's not a strong enough word, but how important it is to choose based on, like you say, your soul,
Mm,
choose based on your spirit, like
vital.
let that lead because this is your only chance.
Mm.
um yeah, I mean, I guess you could go down the road of reincarnation and say, well, I got another chance too. uh, but at least in this life.
Yeah, I'm quite happy if we go down that road too.
Okay.
Because it's all welcome here, Danielle, all of it. But you're so right. And I think the other thing that really, really stands out for me, and I see this a lot, I mean, I'm guessing possibly the way that you and I work with our clients may well have some similarities. I'm kind of feeling that. And I think
Yeah.
the fact that you call yourself, the self-compassionate professor, I think that is like, for me, self-compassion is what sits absolutely at the heart of everything. It's the
Yes.
foundation, the bedrock to everything. All, you know, deep and lasting change, I think, is built on self-compassion.
Yes.
But and then saying that has made the beautiful thought that I was going to share has just completely left my head.
Yeah, I know it's totally fine because I'm thinking about I guess I'll pipe in and say that deep and lasting change that happens when you're able to practice self-compassion. Um, it's just so real because on the one hand, you can just be like I was, like a total work addict and not think about your spirit, not think about your needs, just work, 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 work. And then on the other hand, you could just not show up for life at all and just completely indulge in everything and watch Netflix and like just not do anything. And then you could tell yourself, oh, I'm taking care of myself. But you have these desires for your life that are not being fulfilled when you're doing that either. And so,
And
that what you just said, all deep and lasting change is built on a foundation of self-compassion is so real to me, right? It keeps you moving, it keeps you in action, but it also keeps you from over action. Yeah, it's that middle ground.
absolutely. That's so gorgeous. I've never heard someone like articulate a response to it in such a way that resonates so deeply within me. Like that is exactly how it feels. Like there is this forward momentum, but not in the pushing, seeking, pressing, resisting kind of way. It's in a grounded, balanced, connected, and really like self-supported way.
Yeah.
Do you know that I've remembered the thing that like flew out of my head?
Oh, great.
And it's sort of, it's all, everything's all intertwined, of course. And I think one of the things that really stands out for me is that it's not simply a case of saying, right, that's in everybody, that's it, everybody jack in their jobs, we all go and live on a beach. And it kind of ties in with what you said about like it's not about, it's either work, 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 or watch Netflix, eat crisps, which would be my preference, and like sit on the sofa, all the time. It's about finding this healthy space between all the things that nourish us, all the things that support us. And I think one of the things that I find again and again, and if I'd met myself when I was 30, I'm pretty sure I would have found it then too, that the actual work may not be the problem. It's the way that we have learned for very valid reasons, but the way we've learned to relate to it. And I'm guessing that, I mean, I'm watching you nod, and I'm guessing that is really showing up in the work that you do with others as well. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. One of the things that comes to mind is just those transition periods that we have between one task and the next. I would not let myself have a transition before, right? Like, no, must go, must keep going. Yes, and now it's like, okay, I completed this task. I am going to honor this period of transition and go make myself some tea and walk around the house and just maybe daydream and decide what I want to do in this moment of transition. Oh, I think I'll wipe down the counter. Like just this sense of like, I don't have to be pushing at all times and I get to honor this transition. It's a natural transition. Like the universe gave you this moment to rest in. So honor that. That's what I'm always thinking about. Because I didn't even see the transitions before. I was just on to the next thing. And then I'd be mad that I couldn't get into the next thing quick enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That rings so true. And it's so funny. The reason why I was sort of laughing when you said it is I realized I finished, I was doing some writing today, and I kind of realized I'd like finished doing the piece of writing that I wanted to do. And I had like 40 minutes before this call began. And so I went and sat out. There's a little deck out the front of the stable where I work, and I sat and I journaled, and then I read a book about internal family systems. So I could call it kind of work, but it's such a beautiful book that it's so nourishing. And it was sitting in the sunshine. And then, I just thought, oh, okay, I'll kind of wend my way back here. Now, in the past, you are so right. When I was doing the kind of corporate work, but actually it wasn't because it was corporate work. It was just like that happened to be where I was. I prided myself on the fact that I would rarely have a wee during the day because I was too busy to make it to the bathroom. Now, the impact on my physical system of that cannot have been good, I am guessing.
Right. Yes.
Because
yes, I can relate.
fronts.
Yes.
I'm thinking my kidneys might have really enjoyed having a wee. And I'm also thinking I probably needed to drink more water, because if I was making it through a whole day and not, but I was like, and I'd sort of hear myself say to people, I haven't even had a chance, to have a wee, as though that was check me out. I'm so hardworking.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. 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 That system is so, it's so unhealthy. It's so toxic. It breaks us all down. And because we believe we're doing the right thing when we're doing the worst thing for ourselves. Yeah.
And no one is asking us to do it either. I mean, okay,
right.
Sometimes you're in an environment where there is that very overt toxicity, that very overt control, command environment. And that is a very different experience. But for many of us, the pressures that we're bringing are internal.
Yeah.
And the way that we're saying, this is how I have to work, it's internal.
Totally.
So how do we, I think there are these these phases of this experience. And we've kind of started at the end, here, this is what can happen. And maybe we can come back to some of the techniques that can support us if we notice that's where we are. But if we flip now to the early stages of that process, the early stages of when burnout might be sort of showing its face around us, what's your sense of what can really support us in those moments?
I think that practicing detachment is huge, right? I'm thinking about, the Buddha, all suffering comes from attachment, right? And so if you're feeling really, really, really attached to your work and you cannot do anything other than think about it, practice detaching from it. When you wake up in the morning, don't go straight to your work. When you wake up in the morning, do something that is nourishing for you and then go to your work. I once heard somebody say, that is the fastest road to burnout, to wake up and go straight to your work and override all your needs, all your desires. Because in that you're overriding your inner wisdom and you're just going straight to the task at hand. And then you wonder, why am I not very efficient? Why am I not very creative? Why am I not? And it's because you're overriding all the resources that are already within you. And so honor those first. Practice detaching by not going straight to work. The other thing I would say, I have rest sessions for my clients, random times during the week for 20 minutes, come to a rest session, and it forces them to detach from work for 20 minutes. And we'll either just lie there in silence, we'll do a guided meditation, we'll do something else, but it's the practice of detaching that is the most important in my mind.
Beautiful, beautiful. I absolutely love that. I think there's also something so practical about that idea of like building something else that nourishes you, that gives you a kind of what's in it for me. I'm reminded of the James Clear Atomic Habits book, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how we can, you know, we build habits on top of other habits. So if the habit is immediately picking up the phone or immediately opening the laptop, then see what habits come before it and build something else in. So when
I
you
love
brush your
that. Yeah.
teeth, you then go and gaze out of the window for 3 minutes, like whatever it might be, like even like the tiniest thing can be so powerful. I'm
Yes.
also really thoughtful about like some of the like the verbal cues that can come out of our own mouths. And if we were listening to what we were saying, um, we might notice. So maybe sort of part of this as well is like learning how to pay attention to ourselves, because so often our attention is just out, like pushed out into what everyone else is thinking, doing, need from us, what we feel that we need to give to them, even though they haven't actually overtly asked us for it. And so being able to like in that kind of quiet space of the non-attachment to be able to go, okay, what am I actually saying? What am I actually thinking? What am I actually feeling? Like, what is,
Amen. Yes.
what is actually going on right now?
Yes. 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 And that is one thing I talk a lot about with my clients. Like when you wake up, just notice how you're feeling in your body. Notice what emotions are there. Just let those all be there and don't analyze anything. Just feel it. Just let it be there and feel it and feel it and feel it. And then practice some trust, right? Like I always think of practicing trust as being like gratitude practice or celebrating yourself or celebrating the people around you, like bringing to mind people that you love or that you consider to be very, very good and loving, wise people, either people you know or directly or you know of, right? Like maybe you want to bring to mind Mother Teresa or something, but I always want people to feel what they're feeling and then practice some sort of trust. And so any of those feeling states that get you to feel supported, that get you to feel loving, that get you to feel gratitude, those are the feeling states that get you to trust that the moment is okay, that get you to trust that the career wellness journey you're on is is exactly where you need to be. They are the things that get you to trust that it's okay to take a break between tasks. And these are all the things I'm thinking of as you bring all of that up.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that sparks two things for me. One is that when I was going through a particular sort of phase of my own journey to here, to this place, was I was given a mandala bracelet by a really dear friend, and it had 21 beads on it. I sat and counted, and there were 21 beads, and I was sort of thinking, like, how, like, I really want to kind of honor this gift and sort of really integrate it in some way. And then I thought, well, gratitude is like prayer. And so I began a practice of writing 21 things I was grateful for each evening. And I shared it. It was, I think it may even have been like during COVID, actually, and during lockdown. I shared it on social media because it was a place where I could capture it rather than a place to share it, if you see what I mean. It was almost like a commitment from me to do it. And I continued the practice for about 18 months. And then and then it was okay, and I didn't do the practice anymore, and it was because that's non-attachment, because I noticed I was starting to get very attached, so it's like, oh, okay, now I
Mm.
go. But I noticed it felt like there was a cellular change in my body from doing that practice, from finding, even in the days where all I wanted to say was everything is awful, the world is awful, there is so much sadness, I am awful. Even in those days when I wanted to do that, I was able to write that I was grateful for the feeling that I was having. And I was grateful for giving myself the space for having that feeling. And I was grateful for the leaf that I saw fall and land on the path. I was grateful for, being able to really, really sit, not in a sort of rose tinted spectacled kind of way, but really sit in the gratitude. I truly think it changed me.
Mm.
And I'm
Mm. I
so
love that
grateful to you for
story.
reminding me, because I kind of forget that I did it. We sometimes we can do these things that can have profound impact, and then we move on from them and then we forget. So also maybe part of this is about remembering the things that really, really have served you in the past.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
there was something else as well, Danielle, that you said about celebrating. And I think, I mean, gosh, like, don't we see this in organizations, whatever the industry, whatever the culture, that it's quite rare for things to really be celebrated. I know it's often it can become like a sort of thing for CEOs to roll out, like, we're going to start celebrating successes, and actually what that means is like, well done, now get on with the next thing, and it's
Right.
not really. And an image came to mind when you said about celebration of something my mum always used to do. She would do the Times crossword. She used to be a teacher. She'd do the Times crossword, and then when she'd finished it, she'd write, well done, Bibby, 10 out of 10.
I love that. I love that. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I do that every morning. I appreciate something about myself. Like,
Ah,
you did this well, Danielle. You did, you dealt with this conflict with your son really well yesterday, or whatever it is. And I force myself to think of at least three things that I've done well in the last 24 hours. And that's really helpful. It makes me
oh,
feel really grounded.
oh,
Yeah.
that's really interesting, because it's a deeper take on the gratitude, because you're to be able to sit with your whole self, and be able to look yourself in the eye with such compassion and say, and you did well, my darling.
Mm,
Oh,
yeah. And for me, there's a slightly different feeling state that comes with gratitude and self-celebration. So if you're like really proud of yourself, it's almost like this strength and this
mm,
empowered feeling. That's how it comes across to me.
mm.
And gratitude is more this like, yay, I'm so happy that I'm here feeling. And they're both really, um, it's like honoring the bigness of the world, or the bigness of the universe, the all the things that are around you that you really didn't have anything to do with, they just came to you, versus honoring like you and the things that you've done and the things that you've made better for yourself and for other people, and just sort of honoring your place in the world. And that's a slightly different feeling state, I think.
Beautiful, beautiful articulation of it. That it was so interesting. Like, as you were talking about, I felt my body go, and I felt my shoulders go back and my sort of spine lengthened. And then when you said about the gratitude, I felt myself go, oh, like this sort of softening in, and this gentleness, and also like this sense of pride in ourselves. you know I say this fully imbued with like Britishness and this, it like we must never ever say that we've ever done something well, like, because like that's just not okay. um or this idea, like, so one of my like childhood stories, which didn't necessarily overtly come from caregivers, but I must have picked it up from somewhere, was pride comes before a fall. So if you're too proud of something that you've done, then something bad is going to happen.
Oh, okay. I
Mm.
see. I see.
That's a tasty little number, I have to say. So unlearning that for me has been really useful in many ways, but also kind of like even now, like if I say like, so I've just published a book, um, and even like, God, did you hear it in my voice? I've just published a book. I put my hand up over my mouth. I mean, like, honestly. Okay, we're going to try this again, Danielle. Right.
Yes, yes, I'm excited.
Okay. So, Daniela, I've just published my fifth book, and I am really proud. I am
Mhm.
really proud of it.
I love it. I'm glad you tried it again.
Yeah, me too. God, that felt different.
To me too.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm really, really loving this practice. I am now committing. I am going to, um, each morning, I'm going to say to myself three things, following your lead, three things that I'm proud of, or three things I want to celebrate that I've done. And it's really funny that we're talking about this because I actually told my husband this story just now. I've sorted some stuff out with our insurance today. Something that I had, like, I've been like, you know, needling away in my head, and I just thought, I'm just gonna phone and just check. Am I right? Like, is it all covered? I did it. I rang. It was no problem at all. Everything's sorted. I've actually made it even better. And when I put the phone down, I actually said, "Well done, hen."
Yes, I often say to myself, I'm so proud of you. Good job.
Oh, that's
And
so.
you don't even notice when you say that in one of those moments. Because, like, a moment like that, dealing with insurance and getting through all the stuff, oh, it's the worst. But then you, like, did something really good for yourself and you,
Really
like,
good.
turned into the reality and you didn't really want to do it, but you did it. Good job, Hen. Yeah, totally.
Job. I love that. I love that. And I think so there's something so gorgeous about this sort of part of the conversation where it's like actually all of these things, these ways that we can connect with ourselves, the way that we can be aware, this self-awareness with self-compassion. That's kind of how I talk about the work that I offer. Um, and this not abandoning ourselves, which is what I'm really strongly hearing from you in terms of these morning practices. That feels very, very key. And detaching,
Yes,
like detaching from the other stuff
yes.
and connecting with ourselves. It sort of shows to me, just in the lightness of our conversation just now, that there is a lightness that we can bring that can really support us when stuff feels heavy. And maybe kind of heaviness is one of the cues, actually. I was so we're moving on through then. Maybe we haven't really listened. Maybe we haven't been able to completely detach, and we find ourselves in that place. Maybe the critical event that wakes us up. Maybe it's the voice in our head, with something that I experienced when I was at university, which was crossing the road and hearing myself think, I wish a car would hit me and I would end up in hospital, not really badly hurt, but like hurt enough that I'd have to stay there for a few weeks. And then I thought, oh, okay, something really needs to change here because that thought doesn't feel quite healthy right now. And I split up with my boyfriend. I dropped out of university and I moved house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's a very common thought for people to have when they're in burnout is that I wish something would happen, not that I would die, but that I could be taken out, lifted up like a crane comes and gets me and just puts me somewhere where I don't have to do all this.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, because burnout is very heavy. It feels like you can't carry it all. And so you need the crane to do it for you, right? I need the crane to come get me because I can't do anything right now. And that feeling that you don't have control over your body, I think is huge. If you're doing things like one of the things that I did was I quit remembering students' names. And for me, that was huge because I always remembered students' names. By the end of the first day, I had 90% of my students' names memorized, and I always knew who they were. I always could call them by name very easily. And when I was hitting burnout, I couldn't remember anybody's name. Like I would go through an entire class and be like, I could not remember anybody's name. Like that's a warning sign. So
Mm.
it's this like sense of not having control of your body or your mind. And it's Martha Beck kind of talks about it as like your inner wisdom gets uh well, your inner wisdom takes over and forces you to do things so that it doesn't, so that it can get its way sometimes, right? So, like, you don't want to be in this classroom. So, we're going to just like make it so my inner wisdom is like, we're just going to make it so you can't remember any names because you don't want to be here anyway.
Mm.
Or, like, I remember driving to campus and completely missing my exit. Didn't even get off on the on the ramp and just kept driving. And I missed a faculty meeting completely because I was just like, doo, doo, doo. And I always think about that, how Martha Beck talks about your inner wisdom is just taking over because you have been ignoring it for so long that it's finally like, no, we're not doing it this
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
you don't have control over anything at that point. I mean, I guess technically you do. Your inner wisdom has control, but it feels very disorienting.
And I think that for me that speaks of why so often people get ill
Yeah.
because actually it's that inner wisdom maybe
Mm-hmm.
saying enough, enough. And if you're not going to listen to everything else I've been telling you for days, weeks, months, maybe years, right now I'm going to make sure you listen.
And this actually, as you were telling me about reading internal family systems, I'm thinking about what Dick Schwartz says about parts that aren't being heard
Mm.
and how they just wreak havoc on the body. They're like, no, like I'm just thinking about how like I have a very weak liver, and there are things like when I'm in a bad place, like I have to really I have to get treatment. Like like I am at risk of cirrhosis of the liver. It's an autoimmune disease, like really, really bad things. And I'm just thinking, like, since I have listened to myself more and been more connected to myself, I don't have symptoms anymore. I'm not on medicine anymore. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
That's so I have a history of a bad back spasming sacral iliac sort of joint, the muscles around there, slip discs. Since I changed my life, since I transformed pretty much everything in my life a few years ago after having that sort of critical illness, I have barely taken a painkiller, having been taking them daily for a long time, which is really obviously not to be recommended. And what I notice now is that when there is a disturbance systemically somewhere in my world, like one of the systems that I'm connected with, particularly if it's the family system, my back aches, my back goes, my back spasms, or when I have, masterfully managed to compartmentalize something that has really been asking for my attention, but there really just hasn't been time for it. It will be my back where that part goes, do you know what, darling? You really need to lie down. I, oh, it's so interesting. I remember when uh, this was only a sort of couple of years ago, I put my back out very, very badly. And I remember sitting like, well, kind of hunched, trying desperately to write an email to the clients that I was not going to be able to see that week. And I knew it was going to take time. So 2 weeks of clients I needed to clear. And I was sobbing, trying to write this message. And my husband came in the room and said, Hen, like, what is it? And I said, like, I realized this part of me that always has to show up, this part of me that has to always be present for others, this part, oh, she's devastated at what I'm trying to do. And she's really getting in the way. And he said, does she need permission? And I said, yeah. And he said, can you tell her I give her permission? And I was like, oh, it's pretty smart, isn't it? Isn't that pretty smart of him? I mean,
that was good. Yeah,
a
very,
boy.
very good.
And actually, what I did was I handed him the computer and I said, yeah, she says that's okay, but can you do it?
Yes, yes, yes. What do I want to say about this whole permission thing? I think we want to, I think for me, I want to go back to um, this sense of my own mortality, my own sense of purpose in the world, my own sense of like leaving the world better than how I found it. Um, and that starts with giving yourself permission to take care of yourself, giving yourself permission to show up for yourself. Yeah, that's kind of how what you just said landed for me.
It feels like it connects, that there's a thread here which I can't quite see, but there's a thread that takes us right back to the beginning of our conversation, I think. That this idea of well, maybe this is slightly different, but the phrase that's coming up is this idea of being willing to choose to care for ourselves. It feels so fundamental. And when I play back the story that you shared of your experience of, that work was the place that really took that you gave your attention to. It didn't take it. You gave your attention to it. And it feels like that shift is when we turn our gaze back toward ourselves and say, oh, you're here. Oh, right. Okay.
And I want to just acknowledge how scary that is too, right? When we turn our gaze, because we've been in such a hyper vigilant mode for so long, trying to make all the things work. And like, what happens if we do turn our gaze? Like, what if we do soften a bit? What if we do give ourselves permission? Then what's going to happen? Like, am I setting myself up for some big crisis? Right? Like that can get scary. And so I think going back to the trust practice, right? Going back to the gratitude, the self-celebration, celebrating other people in your life, like going back to those feeling states over and over again so that you can practice trusting that it's okay.
Mm. And coming into that place of groundedness feels
Yes.
so vital. Yeah, I love that. And in fact, I have a collection of words on my wall, and one of them is trust, because I think sometimes when we're taking ourselves through this process of reconnecting with ourselves, um, ourself with a capital S maybe,
Yeah.
that often there'll be like certain words or certain feelings or states that will really support us in remembering, continuing to remember, oh, this is actually the work that I'm doing, this is actually what feels useful for me. And my own experience was after having this massive burnout, this massive illness, I had to take significant amount of time off work, but I did actually return, and I went back into that corporate world for 2 years. But the way that I worked was so different, Danielle. And one of the things that I love is when we can start to actually see the workplace as a playground for
Yes.
practicing the things that we're talking about, and so much more, of course. But we can actually start to sort of see, well, well, how is it if I do like take time to go and have a wee?
Yeah.
What happens? Anything, anything devastating?
Yeah.
No, but I'm a lot more comfortable. Okay. Uh, how is it like if I prepare myself before a big meeting or what might be a difficult phone call? How is it if I give myself a minute in the loo to stand in a power pose like Amy Cuddy sort of talks of,
Yes.
or just to take 3 breaths before I dial the number, like whatever it might be. How is that? What happens then? And to
Mm.
use that as the place of our attention, because we know how to do the job. That's why we're there. You
Yeah.
knew how to be a tenured professor.
Yeah.
That's why you
Yeah.
were there.
Yeah. And then it strikes me that the more you do those things, the more you see that you can do those things and it's totally okay and you actually feel better. And then that trust builds even more. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, Danielle, this I have I feel revitalized
Mm.
from our conversation. I feel energized. And I also really love the fact that we haven't talked about any of the things that I'd like sent you as like, these are things we could talk about. That this has been
I
like
love that too.
oh, me too. I mean, it's just the best, isn't it? It's like, oh, okay, so I'm up in my head and it's like, here's some things. And then we're like, down in the body. And this is the
Yes.
conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
wanted to come out. It wanted to come out. This was
Yeah.
the conversation that wanted to
And
be had. I love it. Yes.
and and so encouraging, I think, as well, to hear the way that you are bringing the experience that you have had in that very competitive academic environment. I can only imagine what that is like. The stuff that gets brought through the whole of the academic system into that place of being, the senior academic, and how you're using that tender and, I can only imagine, deeply challenging experience that you went through personally to support others. It's really beautiful. It's beautiful to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice meeting you as well. I really appreciate the conversation. I really appreciate, I told you this at the beginning, I really appreciate your warmth. Even in your emails, you're warm. And I appreciate that. So thank you.
What a gorgeous conversation. And I really, I really had the sense of you being in the room with me, and I'm saying you to everyone who's listening. Danielle is now gone. I'm now talking directly to you, because it just felt like we were in the company of other souls as we were talking. Kind of reminiscent, really, of the conversation that I had with the lovely Katie Theakston last week. And I just said to Danielle that for me, these conversations, being in conversation with a guest on the podcast, is most meaningful, is most wonderful when it feels like we are really, really discussing something that is of deep interest, deep relevance, deep resonance. And that conversation with Danielle definitely felt like that. So I really hope you loved listening to her. What a gorgeous, gorgeous soul she is. All right, my darlings. I mentioned on the during the conversation that I've just published my 5th book. And if you're not already aware of it, it is called In the Flow, Journal Your Inner Wisdom. And really, it's something that can support you if what you're facing into are some of the things that Danielle and I talked about. It's part guide, part journal, filled with really powerful journaling prompts that can help you get inside maybe some of the stuff that's going on for you in a way that feels deeply self-compassionate and building that self-awareness that Danielle and I were talking about. So if you're curious about it, then you can just search In the Flow, Henny Flynn, on Amazon or bookshop.org or Waterstones or wherever you like to get your books, or you can buy it directly from my lovely, lovely publishers, Inner Work Project, and I'll include a link to that in the show notes. All right, my loves, you take care. I'm sending a hug and a wave.